continue from the previous video. Yes, after 3 years, the father passed away. One day, the son, Dr. Robert Franz, he is a cardiologist. He received a message saying, Dr. Franz, I've heard the possibility that there might be some very interesting data in your father's basement. So that data were related to Dr. Ivan Franz, his study. So you can see those, his study is related to the gout and the cholesterol and the heart disease. Before we reveal his data, so let's talk about the gout and heart hypothesis. We all know cardiovascular disease is very big and the leading global cause of death. In 2019, there are over 19.6 million deaths. There are many things related to the cardiovascular disease. We call CVD. The causes actually is not very clear known, but there are associations regarding we see those patients, they may have high blood pressure, diabetes, smoking, obesity, or from the family history. But of course, age it is a fact, and also inactive and an unhealthy diet. So that's all the possible causes for the CVD. The number one cause of death and disability in the developed world is atherosclerosis. It narrowed the artery due to the plaque buildup. So then we may not have enough oxygen and cause the death. Even we have so many associations, but we can see one thing is an unhealthy diet. Sometimes we say the high blood pressure and diabetes may also caused by the unhealthy diet. So that's why we have the hypothesis. Thinking about the diet and the CVD, do they have the relationship or what their relationship? So associated with the unhealthy diet and physical inactive or smoking or the high intake of the alcohol, they are all possible unhealthy diet and they will cause more the CVD disease. And from the WHO in 2011, they also have said the 1.7 million deaths worldwide are attributed to the low fruit and vegetable consumption. And we can see your diet may link to many different the symptoms for the disease, like the high intake of the salt is linked to the high blood pressure, and high intake of the processed food it also linked to the obesity. And of course, sugar also is linked to the high blood pressure and obesity as well. So that's why eliminated trans fat is widely recommended for healthier diet recently, or actually for decades now. So from those research or observation, make us think about maybe the healthier diet can lower down the cardiovascular disease. So how should we approve that? Or can we find the relationship or the cause relationship? So let's start with that hypothesis. So the diet-heart hypothesis, we are thinking about replacing saturated fat that came from the dairy with the polyunsaturated fat, like the plant-based oil, like the corn oil, olive oil. They reduce the risk of the heart disease. Of course, that's our hypothesis. So according to this hypothesis, how should we design our experiment? So we need to have some justification. So the first thing, if we want to see they do reduce the risk of the heart disease, But what is our test statistic? What number will support that? So the justification is we use the replacement. We see that reduces the serum cholesterol. The serum cholesterol is associated with the heart disease. And the most important thing is the serum cholesterol can be tested from our blood. So the clinic trial that used polyunsaturated fat to replace saturated fat reduced the incidence of the CVD. That sounds a workable hypothesis testing, right? So let's see our hypothesis testing. According to our hypothesis, we will design an experiment. So the hypothesis is we're replacing the saturated fat with polyunsaturated fat, reduce the risk of the heart disease. But the most important thing, what kind of evidence would support this hypothesis? Of course, in our experiment, we need to have the treatment group and the control group. And in the treatment group, we will have then to have the plant-based oil. That's the polyunsaturated fat. But how can we make sure that treatment group will follow the diet? And also how long our experiment will do. So think about that. If now you were designing an experiment to practice our null hypothesis, you are replacing the saturated fat with the polyunsaturated fat. Then we want to see if they reduce the risk of the heart disease. How you will design the treatment group and the control group, and how you will have the treatment group will follow your diet. So of course here the control group, we will just let them eat as regularly. And also when you have the diet for the treatment group, how can you make sure they will follow your diet? And also how long our experiment will last. And also in this treatment group, can we make sure there are no other factors like the drinking or smoking will affect the treatment group? So on the other hand, actually, if we really want to have the treatment group and the control group to be to be treated fairly, we only have the null hypothesis is the only factor different from the treatment group and control group. We kind of need to watch out their diet everyday meal. So that's possible we can do that. Of course, let's pause the video, discuss with your classmates, thinking about how you will do that in now for this time. If we give you some time or the money to design this experiment, how you will do that? And how will be the evidence support this hypothesis? So I just assume you pause the video and think about how to design this experiment. Okay, so remember, right, we have our treatment group and control group. And before we talk about that, the only difference, of course, we choose the treatment group and control group by random. But when we do the experiment, we need to make sure the treatment group and control group, they're only being treated differently from what we, our hypothesis, our null hypothesis is. The interesting thing is they do have this experiment. So this we call the Minnesota coronary experiment. This coronary experiment happened during 1968 to 1973. So you can see that's about 5 years. Let's see that experimental design. It's very important, like earlier we talked about. In this experiment, the most important thing, we need to make sure our treatment group and the control group, every subject, they will follow the diet they are assigned to. and also report their consumption accurately. How do you know and how you make sure? The answer is this experiment is work on a closed population. What means a closed population? All the subjects, actually they were in the same institution. The subjects were institutionalized. All the individuals fed out from the cafeteria for every meal. Yeah, because they are in a place all the time, they all eat from the cafeteria. So that's we say that's the closed population. They are not live by themselves. They are all live together. So here we have our control group. The food was cooked in butter. That's saturated fat, right? And served with butter as usual. So that's our control group. Then the treatment group, the food was cooked in vegetable oil and served with margarine. So that's a corn-based substitute. And also that's double-blind study. Neither the subject nor the people serving the treatment, that means how we serve the food, they don't know whether it is. They don't know which food is for the treatment group or for the control group. They don't know anything about that. For example, when they serve the bread, so they will have something look the same. They look like butter. Okay, so then for the treatment group, they were using the margarine. So neither the subject or the people serving deliver the food. No one will know that's butter or margarine. And this experiment lasts for 5 years. We don't know very detail about this experiment, but that's what we have. And also from this experiment, after the 5 years, they have their outcome. The study continued for 5 years, checking both subject cholesterol level and the health outcomes. Right, we have the treatment group, we have the control group, right? The patient on the vegetable oil diet did end up with lower cholesterol. This one is we know. For the patient that's in the treatment group, when they died, they did have lower cholesterol than the people who ate food cooked with animal fat. So in other words, that means the patient in the treatment group, when they died, they did have a lower cholesterol than the control group. So the control group people, they eat the food cooked with animal fat, or we say the butter. That sounds good, right? Because that did meet our expectation. Because earlier we say that our hypothesis testing, right? So our hypothesis is what? Okay, our hypothesis, we replacing the saturated fat, that's the dairy fat, with polyunsaturated fat, that's the vegetable-based oil. They should reduce the risk of the heart disease. But here, when we say reduce the risk of the heart disease, we use the serum cholesterol index. So that's why the evidence we have, we use the cholesterol. So the good thing is the outcome, the first part did meet the expectation. The treatment group do have a lower cholesterol than the control group when they die. However, the treatment group used the vegetable oil. They didn't live longer. So what does that mean? Earlier we say we think we're using the vegetable oil, so we're using the polyunsaturated fat will reduce the heart disease, right? But also we think about how we see the reduced heart disease. We use the cholesterol number. So right, they do have a lower cholesterol. However, when we really see the age when people die, the treatment group people didn't live longer. So actually they do have some master thesis and they contain some analysis of the data, but they didn't publish. Unlike earlier we say, before we collect the data, but we do have our hypothesis, but our result didn't support our null hypothesis. We need to reject the null hypothesis. So since we need to reject the null hypothesis, so that's why those data never publish. So that's the reason for the experiment data from Dr. Ivan France. He never released that data. So that's in his basement. So we will talk about more in the next video.